In this video, we're going to introduce you to Icelandic food and drink. We'll explore a few of Iceland's signature dishes, their origins, and the history and culture behind them. Without further ado, let's get started. Tens of millions of years ago, Iceland was born from the planet's intense volcanic and seismic activity. It's a magical country that embodies many contradictions. Geographically, although it's located near the Arctic Circle, thanks to the warm Atlantic current, its climate isn't actually that cold. And while the country is quite large, its population is only about 360,000, which in turn makes it one of the world's most sparsely populated countries. Snow-capped mountains shrouded in mist give rise to dark blue streams, which flow together to form Iceland's great rivers and its many waterfalls. And the more than 200 volcanoes scattered across the land not only provide the Icelandic people with abundant geothermal resources, but they also hang like the sword of Damocles, a constant reminder for them to always have a deep respect for nature. Being so isolated from mainland Europe, Iceland's history really begins around the 9th century. According to Iceland's earliest historical work, the Book of Settlements, the ancestors of the Icelandic people were Vikings who came from Scandinavia as well as Ireland and Scotland. The book details the names, identities, and family lines of the first 3,000 or so settlers. Today, nearly all Icelandic surnames can still be traced back to this book. Ever since, generations of Icelanders have carried on the purest form of Norse civilization in this mystical, misty land, Old Norse, the language once spoken, throughout the entire Scandinavian peninsula. It's now hard to find in mainland Europe. But with just a little guidance, Icelanders can read written works from 1,000 years ago. Many of the customs in Icelandic culture have deep historical roots, and their food is no exception. So today, let's take a look at the unique cuisine of this amazing country. Icelandic horses roaming wild and unafraid of humans are a major tourist attraction here. The ancestors of these horses arrived in Iceland at pretty much the same time as the 9th century Vikings. In the harsh, windswept wilderness, the development of these horses began to slow down, making the breed short and stout. They're nothing like the massive, majestic war horses of mainland Europe. But nature has a way of balancing things. In exchange for its powerful appearance, the Icelandic horse gained a long lifespan and the ability to withstand the bitter cold and resist disease. Because the early settlers often faced the challenge of food scarcity, Icelanders developed the custom of eating horse meat. In the year 1000, Norway tried to force Iceland to convert to Christianity by cutting off all trade with the island. The leader at the time, a law speaker named Thorgir, thought it over for a whole night under a blanket. He finally made a decision: they would convert. And so all the old idols of the Norse gods were thrown into a waterfall. Odin's supreme throne was toppled. And that's how the waterfall got its name, Godafoss, the waterfall of the gods. But at the same time, Thorgir established 3 old customs that the church was not allowed to change. First, people could still worship the old gods in private. Second, it was still permitted to abandon unwanted newborns. And third, that they could continue to eat horse meat. From this, you can get a glimpse of just how attached Icelanders are to their horse meat. They like to eat it with mushrooms or some root vegetables. Types of plants. You can also buy a lot of cured sausages made from horse meat in supermarkets. I remember back in 2013, there was that scandal in the UK where some shady businessmen were passing off horse meat as beef. It caused a huge panic for a while. On that note, I'd really be curious to hear what Icelanders think. I mean, did the British people actually get a good deal or a bad one? In Iceland's history, no food has been more important than fish. It's an inseparable part of Icelandic culture. Fishing not only allowed Icelanders to survive and thrive, but the export of fish also helped this country transform from a poor ward of medieval Europe into one of the wealthiest nations today. Up until the 1950s and 60s, Icelanders still ate fish every day. They engraved fish on their coins and even went to war over it, waging the only 3 wars in their history. And their opponent was none other than that other old capitalist powerhouse on the fringes of mainland Europe, Great Britain. The story behind all this begins with World War II. Iceland became a republic in 1944. At the time, the European continent was already engulfed by the smoke of World War II. Iceland's 2 big cousins on the Scandinavian peninsula, Denmark and Norway, had been occupied by Germany. Due to Iceland's important strategic location in the North Atlantic, Britain and the US decided to be the first to station troops there. This military decision by the 2 major powers brought unprecedented growth to Iceland. All kinds of infrastructure, around Keflavik Airport, and Reykjavik Airport shot up out of nowhere. During this period, Iceland modernized at an astonishing speed. After World War II ended and the Cold War began, Iceland joined NATO and signed a treaty with the United States, which became the nation's military protector. The year was 1958. For the sake of its fishing industry and its development, Iceland proposed extending its territorial waters to 12 nautical miles. They also demanded that all foreign fishing vessels within that area leave Icelandic waters. When Great Britain heard this, they freaked out. They said, "You, a tiny little Iceland, are nothing but a pathetic little country that begged for my protection back in the day. Your ancestors, they were all just poor relatives who couldn't make it here and had to run off to your island. And now you have the nerve to fight me for fishing grounds in the Atlantic." So with a single command from Queen Elizabeth II, the Royal Navy was dispatched to escort British fishing boats. In the eyes of the British, Iceland, a country without even an army, was a total pushover. But they overlooked one thing when it comes to politics. Iceland is the granddaddy of all of Europe. Iceland's parliament, the Althing, was founded in 930. It's the world's oldest modern parliament. An entire political system, the Icelandic Commonwealth, was built around it. And it's still highly regarded by European historians to this day. As the formidable Royal Navy advanced on Iceland, the Icelanders, who didn't even have an army, didn't fight them head-on. Instead, they turned around and knocked on the door of the resident U.S. military office. They ordered the U.S. to leave the island within a set time and simultaneously threatened to withdraw from NATO. "Just because Britain is bullying me, you guys won't step in and do what's right. Fine, then all of you can just get out." After that, the U.S. and NATO immediately jumped in to mediate. They dragged Great Britain to the negotiating table. Amid a chorus of voices urging them to consider the bigger picture, the Royal Navy had no choice but to pack up and go home. This same drama played out twice more in 1972 and 1975, and Iceland's territorial waters expanded from 12 nautical miles to 50 nautical miles, and then 200 nautical miles. Model Iceland on the dinner table, and of course the people showed their deep passion for eating fish. Early Icelanders would take various kinds of fish, clean them, debone them, and air dry them, creating a unique type of dried fish. Icelanders eat it raw. They eat it in sandwiches, they stew it in porridge, but when it comes to eating fresh fish, the most famous dish is Icelandic fish stew. Cod is the most common ingredient. First, the fish is blanched. Then butter is melted and onions are sautéed in the pan and flour is sprinkled in. Then milk is gradually added. After that, the fish is put in and mixed together. Finally, mashed potatoes are stirred in until it's almost too thick to stir. Sprinkle some pepper on top and it's ready to serve. Of course, this is just a relatively traditional recipe. Nowadays, there are many trendy versions of Icelandic fish stew. Some add chives, some add mayonnaise and cheese, and some even add curry. Anyway, it's just a thick paste that you're supposed to spread on bread and eat. Some of the earliest settlers in Iceland were also a group of pretty stubborn people. They moved to a whole new world, but still missed their days on the European continent. The life of farming and cooking. They had a deep-rooted need for grains, but they soon discovered that this land of ice and fire was really not suitable for farming. Aside from some very limited plots of land that could be used to cultivate cabbage, carrots, and kale, trying to clear large areas to grow wheat, that was impossible. And due to its unique geographical location, Iceland's fragile ecosystem was extremely susceptible to the effects of the so-called Little Ice Age. They barely struggled through to the 18th century, only to be hit by a catastrophe known as the Mist Hardship. Back then, the Loki volcano on the south coast of Iceland had a massive eruption that lasted for 8 months. About 1/5 of ice. Land's population died directly in the disaster. After that, the lava and volcanic ash wiped out 80% of Iceland's live stock and crops. This in turn caused another quarter of the population to die of famine. The remaining survivors almost moved the entire country to Denmark. On top of that, the ripple effects of this disaster also led to famine in France, which indirectly helped light the fuse for the French Revolution. In short, throughout their history, Icelanders have never really had an abundance of crops to eat. And you always want what you can't have the most. That's why Icelanders treat making bread as a really big deal. They do it with gratitude and great care, terrified of wasting the rare, hard-won ingredients. Leaf bread is a perfect example of this. First of all, it's a holiday food that's only enjoyed during Christmas time because flour was so scarce. Leaf bread is made to be extremely thin. On the paper, thin dough, People reverently carve intricate leaf-like patterns. Then it's quickly fried in a pan. Because it's so closely tied to Christmas, it's also called Christmas bread, a food that's associated with the birth of Jesus. Just think about how important that makes it. Because resources were so scarce, Icelanders have long had a good habit of being frugal and not wasting anything. They weren't nearly as picky as the folks in mainland Europe. If it was edible, they ate all of it. And for what they couldn't eat, they'd find all sorts of ways to preserve it. Take a sheep, for example. Icelanders figured out how to make several delicious dishes from a single animal. First up is smoked lamb model. The traditional method is to first collect some sheep droppings. The locals call them Welsh truffles. These truffles are mixed with wood, shavings, and placed at the bottom of a wooden box. Then the mutton is hung above it. You light a fire, cover it, and smoke it for a good 2 days and 2 nights. It's smoked until the mutton takes on the color of the truffles, then it's refrigerated for 4 days. This allows the flavor of the truffles to penetrate deep into the meat, and just like that, the delicacy is ready. To eat it, you first boil the smoked meat and cut it into thick slices. Dip it in sauce and serve it with green peas. You can't even imagine how delicious it is. Boiled sheep's head is another delicacy, usually reserved for festivals. After all, people only slaughter sheep on special occasions. The Icelanders just boil them whole when preparing them. When it's served, even the teeth and eyes are still right there on it. I can't help but think of that classic Bear Grylls line sheep. Eyeballs are a high-protein, Icelandic delicacy rich in vitamins. In addition, Icelanders also take ram's testicles and pickle them in whey. They even mash the finished product into a more easily digestible paste. Good grief, rams. Testicles soaked in whey to make a sauce? What do you even eat that with? Personally, I think pig intestine sashimi is about as wild as I can get. Besides these delicacies, the remaining parts of the sheep are also collected by Icelanders and mixed with oats, rye, and various spices to make a type of sausage. The very last scraps of meat and bones are used with vegetables to make a stew. But then again, Icelandic sheep really are worthy of all this attention. That's because for most of the year, they are let out of their pens to roam freely in the countryside, feeding on wild grasses, berries, and seaweed. I know this video has been going on for a while, and many of you are probably getting a little impatient. So why haven't you mentioned that one dish, that world-famous delicacy? Here it is, the fermented shark you've all been asking for. It's being served up for you now. This dish is made from the Greenland shark found near Iceland. The meat of the Greenland shark is poisonous when fresh. So back in the day, Icelanders needed to bury it in a hole before eating it, to ferment for at least 6 weeks. Only then was it safe to eat. And if you're feeling thirsty, you can even have some of the blood and flesh soup that seeps out while the shark is curing. Thanks to the aging process, this is also non-toxic. When people eat it, they take this fish meat, which gives off an ammonia smell, and cut it into small, cute little cubes to make it easy to eat. Each piece thoughtfully comes with a toothpick. They say the texture of fermented shark is similar to butter, and the more authentic the cured shark is, the more you'll feel a burning sensation when you swallow it, like you've just had a shot of strong liquor. In fact, Icelanders do like to have a glass of their local unsweetened schnapps when eating cured shark. Iceland's history, much like its landscape, is forged in fire and ice, full of ups and downs. During the long Middle Ages, the Viking settlers who first arrived on this wild land spent a long time facing the challenges of nature, living a difficult and impoverished life. The character of many of the country's traditional foods was also forged during this period. But in the 20th century, Iceland began to develop rapidly, especially in the 90s. Thanks to its unique geographical advantages, their industrial structure became more diverse, and they leaped to become one of the world's most developed countries. But the financial crisis of 2008 dealt Iceland an unprecedented blow. Iceland's 3 major banks all went bankrupt overnight. They barely managed to pull through, but then in 2010, after being dormant for 200+ years, the Eyjafjallajökull volcano went and had a massive eruption. In 2015, the Bardarbunga volcano also erupted violently. I feel like no matter how much money you make, living heat must be real. Lie tough. You're around more than 200 volcanoes all the time. I mean, how do they even sleep at night?